Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Zoe Evans, and I manage the Less Lawn, More Life campaign. Today is the fourth webinar in our series for the challenge, and this one is all about water. So, water is the thing that almost every yard is struggling with today, either too much of it or not enough. And today, we're going to get to learn from someone who's spent decades figuring out how to work with it instead of against it. Before we bring Brad on, let me give you some housekeeping and a quick rundown of what we're going to be covering. So, a few housekeeping notes. This will be recorded, so if you miss any of it, you'll be able to catch up later. We're going to share links for mentioned resources in the chat throughout the webinar. And we encourage you to use the chat and comments to ask questions and engage with each other because so many of you are experts and have so much advice to give to one another. So, here's the plan. I'll give you a quick overview of what Less Lawn, More Life is for anyone new or who's just joining. Then I'm going to hand it over to Brad for the main event, and we'll close with a Q&A. So for those who don't know us yet, Less Lawn, More Life is a free 12-week challenge. So each week we send you a small, doable action in your inbox that adds up to real ecological change on your piece of earth. You'll get expert speakers like the one you're going to hear from today. You get a free yard assessment, and then there are prizes and badges at the end. So some of you are already deep into it. Maybe you're at week 8, and some of you might be just starting week 1 today or not even signed up. And that's totally fine because you can join anytime and you'll start from the beginning and work your way through the series. And the important thing is just that wilder is healthier for you, your kids, your pets, the earth. And that's what this is all about. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that this would not be possible without the incredible organizations behind Less Lawn, More Life. So these are some of our key strategic partners that are providing the expertise and free resources that make this campaign possible, and they're all participating in the campaign alongside you. And here's just a snapshot of over 175 regional partners, and this isn't even all of them. There are watershed groups, land trusts, HOAs, municipalities, and even houses of worship. So this is truly grassroots. And if you know a local organization that should be part of this, please encourage them to join and help promote the campaign in their community. So in addition to today's webinar, we have some incredible experts lined up this summer. Recordings are available of the previous sessions, and coming up, you can learn how to make a wildlife pond, ways to use yard debris to make art and habitat, how to talk to neighbors and HOAs, and then how to think about creating a whole yard layout if you want to go beyond the 5x5 patch that we recommend starting with in the challenge. So if you're signed up for the challenge, you'll be invited to all of these. They're all free. Go to lesslawnmorelife.com if you're not already signed up. In addition to the expert webinars, you also have access to our free companion app called Wilder Places to support you in the challenge. You can download it. It's on iOS and Android. Put in your address, and you'll get personalized native plant recommendation based on what's actually native to where you live. And they're also ranked by how much they support pollinators in the food web. And you can also do things like track which species you've planted or want, what wildlife habitat features you've added, like bird baths or wildlife ponds. And now you can even use it to learn about your watershed, which of course relates directly to today's webinar and to week 8's challenge. So here's what most people don't realize. Every one of us lives on a watershed. It's the land around you that drains into some common point, a creek, a river, an aquifer. So whatever happens on your property doesn't stay there. Stormwater rushing off your yard can overwhelm the sewers and push raw sewage into local waterways. The pesticides you spray can reach the aquifer. And in a lot of places, people pour their drinking water onto their gardens while the aquifer below them runs dry. And it cuts both ways. Some of us have too much water, soggy yards, and flooded basements. Some of us have too little. So today is about managing both on your land. And today's guest has built a life proving that you can. So without further ado, I'm delighted to introduce today's expert speaker. Brad Lancaster wrote the book on rainwater harvesting, literally. He's the author of Rainwater Harvesting for Drylands and Beyond, and for more than 30 years, he's been turning ordinary lots into landscapes that catch and hold every drop. On his own eighth of an acre in Tucson, where barely 11 inches of rain fall a year, he and his family harvest 100,000 gallons. What I love about Brad's approach is that it isn't precious or expensive. He famously says you can start for the price of a shovel. So you don't need a tank or a system to begin. You just have to start to look at your yard a little differently. And as Brad says, turn your drains into sponges and scarcity into abundance. And that's what he's going to walk us through today. And he'll also talk about, for those of us in soggy, wet areas, how do we manage all that too much water? So, Brad, thank you so much for being here today. I'm going to get out of the way, and the floor is yours.
All right. Well, thanks so much for the opportunity to speak with you all. Let's jump right into the talk. And I'd like to begin by asking just a few questions. So, what's the story of your place? What's the essence of it? What makes it special and unique? And as you're thinking about that, what is your relationship to your place and that story? And that question then leads to the third, which is what is your role in the story of your place? So, as you're pondering that, I'm going to share a story of my place. So, Tucson, Arizona, which is on the borderlands area with Mexico, the Sonoran Desert, where we receive 11 inches of rain a year. And these two photographs show you how drastically things have changed in just about 100 years. So, the photo on the left, taken in 1904, shows how we used to have a perennially flowing river. The Santa Cruz River used to flow year round. And that was thanks in large part due to the fact that the watershed, the water catchment, was full of vegetation that acted like a living sponge that would absorb that water when it rained and recharge the groundwater, recharge the aquifer. And the river, in a sense, was the overflow to the aquifer. But if you compare that to today, the image on the right, basically, now we've lost the river. We killed the river because we overpumped or overconsumed at our groundwater at a rate that exceeded natural recharge. While at the same time, we replaced that living sponge of vegetation with pavement of buildings, streets, or just compacted bare earth. So we converted a sponge to a drain. And as a result, our groundwater dropped over 300 feet. The roots of the riparian vegetation can no longer access that water. We lost the riparian forest, and we lost many springs and whatnot. We look more closely at the built environment of our community. We see that we seem to be a hydrophobic society. We seem to be afraid of water because whether or not we're conscious of it, the way we design the majority of our infrastructure is to get rid of that gift of water from the sky, the rain, as quickly as possible. So this leads to a dehydration infrastructure that is literally dehydrating our community and making it much hotter in the dry times. So you see, we just have bare parking lots. We've got these guns of Navarone like storm drains shooting water out of the system. And then that is leading to more flooding. So floods that used to occur every 100 years are now occurring more like every 10 years. But the rainfall pattern hasn't really changed. What's changed is the condition of the watershed, the condition of the land. So again, instead of the rain hitting a living sponge of vegetation that can absorb that water, it hits pavement or compacted earth that then drains that water off more quickly, leading to more flooding downstream. So that's a real liability for traffic and whatnot, as you can see in the left, where we've got the car hitting um, the all the water in the streets. But there's also a boon for the tourism industry because we're now have this extreme urban sport of urban runoff kayaking, and that's my neighbor Matt Weber kayaking down First Street, which is actually a paved wash or waterway in my neighborhood. So I like to think of distance as energy because as in the current state of affairs where we are mismanaging the rainfall in our desert community, and draining that free rain away, we've created the need, quote unquote, to import water from elsewhere. So the Central Arizona Project Canal in the upper left image, that pumps water uphill over 300-mile distance from the Colorado River to Tucson and Phoenix. And it water's very heavy, takes a huge amount of energy to move that water when you're working against gravity. So it's the single largest consumer of electricity in the state of Arizona and the single largest emitter of carbon in the state of Arizona because we use fossil fuels to power the pumps that pump the water in that canal. And in the lower left, you can see one of the pump stations. And as a result of all this overconsumption, we've basically killed the southern end of the Colorado River. It no longer makes it to the Sea of Cortez, no longer makes it to many sections within Mexico. So what I find horrific about all this is a story of Tucson is we are a local river killer, but now we've taken steps to become the killer of a much larger river, the Colorado River. And we're not the only ones. There's many communities throughout California, Colorado, Utah, and others that are pumping water from the Colorado River at an unsustainable rate as well. Okay, so that might be depressing. I'm going to flip to some happy stuff. So in just a moment. So the story I just told talks about degenerative infrastructure that is actually worsening the health of the ecological systems that sustain us all. And if that's the case, and I'm living in this scenario, is that the story of this place? Is that the purpose of this place? Are we to be river killers? And is it my role to be a contributor to a river killer in that? To that, I say, heck no, because I don't like that story. So let's flip the story to a happier one. And here is where I find great potential. So it turns out that more rain falls on the surface area of Tucson in an average year of rainfall than all the population of Tucson, over 500,000 inhabitants, consume of municipal water. So if you look at these little numbers in the bottom, it shows that the rainwater income is 223 gallons per person per day. If you could capture and distribute that rainwater throughout the year to our over 500,000 inhabitants, there'd be 223 gallons per person per day. And then if you look at how much water we consume of municipal water, it's 82 gallons per person per day. So there's well over more rain available than we are consuming. And if you're wondering where I got that number, if you go to the resources page of my website's harvestingrainwater.com, and look on the resources page and then look at one-page place assessments, you'll see I make these one-page cliff notes or cheat sheets that give you a lot of information about a place. And I've generated these for everywhere I've given a talk, and I also show you how you can create your own if I haven't given a talk in your community as of yet. Um, and at the very top, under where it says one-page place assessment, it tells you what watershed you live within. We being in the Santa Cruz River subwatershed of the larger Colorado River watershed. Okay, so here is an image showing where people have actually created a spring rather than killed a spring. So they created this speed hump-like low rock wall perpendicular to the flow of the water atop the bedrock. And that speed hump has slowed the flow of water enough that sediment and whatnot has accumulated on the upstream side in a level terrace, and there's lots of filtering native vegetation growing within that rapidly absorbs the water that's held within that terrace of soil, and then it's slowly released in the form of a seep spring from which this woman is taking a delicious drink. So this is where I get a lot of life juice. This is where I get inspired. So we can actually have a positive impact with very simple strategies like this. But we can do even better, because you may notice by the woman's head here that some of the rocks have come out and the structure is starting to erode. So we can do this in an easier, more effective way. And this is it. Well, this is one example of that. So here we've got a rock structure again, but there's no concrete mortar between the rock, and it's way fewer rock, and it's a structure only one rock high, not multiple rocks high. However, it's 5 courses of rocks wide that Van Clothier, a friend and colleague, just hand set here. So it is creating a speed hump in the flow, water coming down the drainage. And it allowed sediment to accumulate within and behind the structure. Moisture lingers longer in this speed hump in the flow. and then seeds germinate within it. So he's starting to get some riparian grasses that are starting to regrow where, due to disturbance on this ranch, they had lost the riparian wetland and things that eroded down to bedrock. But he's helping bring some of that back. Here is another couple slides of that site. So we've got on the left the before and on the right the after. And you can see how disturbance on the site due to overgrazing and other things had eroded down the waterway to bare bedrock. So on the right, this is the after. He created a little speed hump, one rock dam here, another one up here, another one further back there. Those all slowed and spread and infiltrated the flow of water enough that all these riparian grasses returned in just 5 years. So he's bringing back a once dead wetland. And here on the left, things are so juicy that so much water is being accumulated within this regrown wetland and all those great riparian grasses that water is literally moving uphill on its own via capillary action. And the wetland grasses are following it. Van is standing on one of these simple one rock dam structures that he built. So the great thing with this type of strategy is you're just nudging things with the initial installation, and then the natural system takes over. So it becomes a living system as opposed to just a non-living rock structure. Um, Hopefully you guys are getting excited by some of the potential. And now I want to shift to the built environment. Okay. I was just showing you some images in more a rural setting, but now let's look at more an urban, suburban kind of setting. So on the left, we have two landscapes that are draining the free rain. And not just rain, also municipal water and so forth. So in the upper left, it's showing where we've got grass turf, but the landscape is a subtle but mound. So it's draining both the sprinkler irrigation water to sidewalk and street, and also rainwater from the roof and rainwater hitting the general landscape. So not only is this draining rain and city water, but it's also draining some soil and nutrients from the landscape as well. So sometimes people think, okay, well, I'll shift that by changing the plant palette. So they might shift from a more water-hungry grass turf or lawn to a more xeric or low water use native plantings. And sometimes in the Western U.S., people will replace turf with some gravel as well. But because they did not change the dysfunctional topography or microtopography that is more hill-like, um, it's still draining surplus irrigation water. It's still draining rainwater and stormwater out of the system. And now that gravel that they put on there, that just rolls down the hill onto the sidewalk, creating burden for those on wheels. And it creates clogs and other problems in the storm drain. So on the right is what I'm advocating for the shift. Let's plant the rain as opposed to drain the rain, okay? And do so in a way that's not going to cause flooding issues. So now we've shifted from the hill-like topography to a basin-like shape. So you can see that the water coming off the roof can collect and rapidly infiltrate where we've got the living pumps of vegetation. The sidewalks also drain their water to this area. And in times of no rain, one can also direct their household gray water, the lightly used water going down the drains of showers, bathtubs, laundry, washing machines, not the toilet. They can send that gray water into the landscape to be a water source in times of no rain. So the same water harvesting rain garden can collect other waters as well. So this can result in a 30 to 70% reduction in potable water consumption, because the water that goes from the tap to our yard, that's drinking water. And I think it's crazy that we spend all this money purifying water to drinking water standards, and then we just send it right into the dirt. So let's instead use rainwater and gray water, free on-site waters, as our primary irrigation source, as opposed to municipal drinking water or water from your well. Okay. So I now want to give you 8 simple common sense guidelines or principles on how to go about harvesting rainwater. So the first is start with long and thoughtful observation. So when it rains, get outside and see where's the water flowing. Where is it too quickly draining away and you're losing it? That's a potential problem. Or where is it flowing up against your house? That's a potential problem. But then there's also good things that you could mimic. So where is water pooling, rapidly infiltrating, and acting as a free water source, generating more life on your site? That's what you want to mimic. So look for the issues that you need to address, and then look for how you can turn things around. So, next principle is I like to start at the top of my watershed and work down. Okay. So, the water coming off your roof, maybe you've got gutters, maybe you don't. Um, if you do, you've already got that water at a high spot. So, if I've got gutters, I like to direct my downspout from my gutters to high points of my property so that I can keep using that gravity to distribute the water where I want it. Okay. um, Use that to your advantage. And by starting at the top, there's also another benefit. There's going to be less volume of water, there's going to be less velocity of water typically. So it's an easier place to start and succeed rather than starting at the bottom where all the water is and might be too much for you to handle. Third principle, start with small and simple strategies. So that could be as small and simple as a little hand dug rain garden or basin, like you see in this illustration, next to or uh, within your plantings. And this It's key to start small and simple. So you start. If you instead start with some elaborate plan, you might never get off your butt because you're intimidated by how much work this huge plan might entail. So just chip away at it. Fourth principle, slow spread and infiltrate the flow of water. Okay, so we don't want the scenario in the upper left. We want the scenario in the upper right. So we want multiple speed humps along the flow that slow down, spread out, and infiltrate more of that water subsurface. So it's available long after the rains, and it's supporting much more life and can help recharge our aquifers, our groundwater, and so forth, and reduce flooding downstream. And now the fifth principle, which actually in this illustration is also helping show how you slow spread and sink the flow of water. So see here how the water is being directed off the roof into a rainwater tank. Instead of that rainwater tank just overflowing randomly, it's purposely being overflowed to a rain garden with a tree. So that and thereby meeting this principle, the fifth one, of always plan for an overflow and manage that overflow water as a resource. So the rainwater tank overflow becomes a water source for the tree's rain garden. And that overflow water goes through a diversion swale that directs it to another rain garden for another tree, whose overflow goes into a contour swale that then overflows to another rain garden. So we're slowing, spreading, and sinking the flow of water all along. And we're starting at the top and we're working down. So it's much more manageable. And we figured out where to do what with that long and thoughtful observation. So hopefully you're seeing how all these principles work together. You don't pick your favorites, you use them all. Okay. The sixth principle is maximizing the living and organic ground cover, the sponge. So the image on the left, this is where I think there's kind of a viral disease going across the western U.S. where people are over graveling and over rocking their yard. I think their intention might be good. They're trying to reduce water consumption in their landscapes. But then, like this guy, sometimes they don't want to cover up this huge investment of rock they did, and so they start vacuuming up the leaf drop that fall on the rock and gravel, basically strip mining the nutrients and part of that organic sponge out of the system. So I advocate for the scenario on the right, where this is my brother. He's cutting up prunings from our white sapote fruit tree and dropping up those cuttings. The cuttings of the prunings, we do 6-inch or shorter sections. That way we don't have like fire generating brush, but we have more organic matter soil contact for more rapid decomposition and better sponge work. Okay, so this creates a better sponge that can absorb the water, and we're able to retain all those nutrients on site. The other thing with this whole idea is, leaves are called leaves because we're supposed to leave them. So don't rake and blow away your leaves. Retain your leaves so those nutrients can cycle back through the system. The seventh principle, maximize the beneficial relationships and efficiency by stacking functions. Okay, so let's get all our strategies to do multiple things, not just one thing. So, an example here, we've got a rainwater tank overflowing to a rain garden with a tree. Ideally, we place those where we can passively shade and cool our house and outdoor areas. So, perhaps on the west side of your house or the east side, so in the hot summer months, it's shading you from the hot rising or setting sun. Don't put them on the south side of your house. Well, they'll shade and shade you and make you more cold in the winter when the sun in the winter months is in the southern part of the sky. Okay. Select vegetation that doesn't just create shade, but also food for you, for wildlife. And do a number of water harvesting strategies. So, don't just get stuck on tanks. Think about how the soil can be your living tank, and the roots become the living pump that accesses that water in the soil. And then you can eat the water in the form of fruit and other things. Okay, and then the eighth principle is really going back to the first. It's again long and thoughtful observation, but it's the feedback loop. So you want to continually reassess your system, see what's working, build on that, see what's not working, change that. Okay, and don't use these principles as a checklist, like saying, "Oh, I started the top of my watershed with that rain garden. Check, I'm done." You'll fail if you use it as a checklist. Instead, continually go back through the principles and see, well, did I really start at the top of my watershed to the best of my ability, or could I do even better? So, for example, I put in a rainwater tank that was, high on my property and was collecting water off the roof, but I didn't keep the overflow from the tank high enough. So I was actually overflowing my rainwater tank to a low spot of the yard. And then I thought, wow, if I redirect the overflow pipe, I could send it behind the fence, keep it high to a high dry part of my yard. And that worked a lot better. Okay, so here's some examples utilizing these principles. The upper image did not. Okay, so this is my brother and I's neighborhood in Tucson, Arizona. That we bought this property, and this is what it looked like when we bought it. So the rainwater was running off property into the street, creating flooding issues for those downstream and dehydrating us. So we thought, well, how could we turn this around? So we redirected the water in the opposite way. So we started cutting street curb and directing the water from the street into street side plantings lower than the street. And we actually started where we did not need to cut the curb, and I'll talk about cutting the curb a bit more later, because we had an existing dip where there had once been a driveway. So now we give more water back to the system than we take out because it's not dependent on any city or well water anymore. It's just getting free rainwater and stormwater runoff. So we're actually helping contribute to the recharge of the aquifer or the groundwater rather than contributing to its extraction. And none of these plantings, now that they're established, took 1 to 3 years to get them established when they're really small and planted. We don't water them anymore. It's just rainwater and stormwater. So it's saving us a lot of money, okay? And creating more shady, healthier environment for our community. So I have a little rule. I don't plant any plant until I first plant the rain. Or if the plants are already planted, maybe I'm retrofitting a site, well, then I do some retrofit planting. So again, that's that idea of let's get these basin-like shapes instead of mound-like shapes that retain rather than drain, not just the rainfall, but also leaf drop and all that great organic matter nutrients. So here's a scenario where this shows you how you can increase your available rainfall. Okay. So in the left side, you see we've got a tree and some little couple understory plants within a rain garden. Okay. So it's receiving 100% of the rain that falls from the sky. Um, in my case, we get 11 inches. So it's getting a full 11 inches of rain, as long as that basin is deep and wide enough to hold that water. But so most people that have these mound-like landscapes, they're not getting the full amount of rain. They're maybe getting half because they're draining at least half the rain that falls. So in this left side image, this is a way you can flip it so you get all the rain. Now, to increase your available rainfall even more, let's direct runoff from adjoining surface, maybe a hardscape surface like a roof. It could be a patio, it could be a sidewalk or a walkway. So, if the area of that hardscape, in this case the roof, is about the same area as the rain garden, depressed rain garden, now you've doubled your available rainfall. Okay, you're getting all the rain that falls directly in the rain garden and the rain that falls on that adjoining hardscape surface that drains into it. So, even better. Want to triple the available rainfall? Let's not just direct on the right-hand image here, let's not just direct the runoff from the roof, but also the adjoining landscape. Might be a patio here. So we've increased the size of the watershed contributing to the rain garden, ideally sized to handle all that water. And in my books, I show you real simple calculations to figure out how to size all this stuff. Even if you don't do the math, even if you just create the topography to hold that water and have the vegetation to rapidly infiltrate it along with the organic matter, you're doing way better. Okay. So here's some illustrations showing how you can do this around a home. So you're really trying to maximize what you can do. So this home, you can see all the blue arrows. They denote the water flow in a rain event. Okay. So we've got kind of an arc of trees on the west, north, and east sides, but not the south because we want to let in the winter sun coming from the south in the winter months for free heat and light. Okay, and you can see how water collects, and then on the right-hand image, how that vegetation responds. I don't know if you see on the left-hand image, there's these dashed black lines. Those are representing the gray water drain pipes, directing gray water from shower, bathtub, washing machine to these plantings as well. And perhaps you notice, can you see that some of these trees on the right-hand image have colored dots representing the fruit? So those would be the exotic fruit trees. They're needing a little bit more water than, say, a native. So we have those where we've planted both rainwater and gray water. Higher use non-native plant gets both waters, whereas a native can do great just on the rainfall. And in the lower right image, this shows you on a desert highway to Tombstone, Arizona, where it's so dry, we pretty much just have creosote, an extremely arid adapted plant. But yet, along the highway, there is this linear forest of trees, native trees that nobody planted, nobody cares for, nobody waters. How is it possible that it exists? Well, the street is raised and it drains its water to a sunken or depressed linear swale along water harvesting swale along the highway. And that whole idea of direct that water from adjoining surfaces to the planting area, they increase the available rainfall by 3 times, enabling a linear forest of native trees to exist where otherwise it wouldn't. Simple stuff. Okay, this is an image at the Milagro Co-housing Development in Tucson, Arizona, that shows you how you can do this on more like a neighborhood scale. So the whole landscape between the buildings is depressed. The sidewalk or the walkway is raised. So the water from the roofs and the walkways drain into the depressed landscaped areas. Now, the image on the left shows you what happened when 2 inches of rain fell in less than an hour. And these are high clay soils. They don't really infiltrate well. So how do we flip that around? And then in the right shows you, well, this is how we started to address that. So we have 4 inches of organic mulch on the surface. And so this is a key thing for those of you experiencing too much rain, like if you're a wetter area. Oftentimes what we lack is organic matter in the soil. So get more organic matter mulch on the surface, and then also in the form of living plants, those living pumps. So they help pull the water down and help evapotranspire the water as well. So, and then in the lower left image, this shows you the landscape 10 years after planting, and now it's watered entirely solely by rainfall and household gray water. No drinking water, okay, in a very dry climate, okay? Um, so this is a water sustainable landscape. And this is now an image showing you an overview of the site. So all the rectangles with numbers are the buildings, the homes. The blue areas are the rain gardens. The kind of hatched area is the raised sidewalk. And then the green circles are trees. So we the top of the watershed is lower left, and then things drain to upper right. So we had a civil engineer add up the cumulative storage capacity of all these micro basins within the landscape, and he found that this cumulative landscape had 10 times the stormwater capacity and control of a conventional um, stormwater system. So this is 10 times better at flood control than typical flood control system. And it's much cheaper because there's no pipes. Everything's on the surface. And it has an additional service of becoming the free irrigation for the landscape. So this is a much less expensive, much more effective way of harnessing our water, managing our water. So within these rain gardens, these basins typically have a more or less level bottomed basin, but we have three distinct rain garden planting zones. So we've got the bottom, the terrace, and the top. So in the bottom, this is where we plant our more water tolerant, water needy species, but also our more cold tolerant, because on cold winter nights, cold air will pool kind of like molasses or maple syrup in the low spots. And then we plant our less water tolerant, less water needy plants on the terrace. And then we plant our least water tolerant needy plants on the top and our more cold intolerant plants on the top. And so uh, if you're wondering, well, how would I figure out what plant goes where? Well, the simple answer is you go take a hike. Go to an intact part of your local ecosystem and see what plant species grow in the low spots, more inundated with water, sediment, and cold. And then see what species tend to like the higher spots. And that will tell you what you might want to transfer back to your site. Also, in my books and on my website, I list plants by their ideal rain garden zone. And we're working with local plant nurseries to do the same. So people can go in and say, hey, I want a red flowering plant that also works really good in a rain garden bottom zone. And the nursery can say, oh, well, right over here. That's so make it easier for everybody. Now, when we create these rain gardens or other water harvesting earthworks or strategies, there's a huge advantage and a huge need. We got to up the organic matter. So in the upper left is showing our native soil here in the built environment, which is very much lacking in organic matter. It's very much lacking in life. So when we create a basin shape, we are capturing the leaf drop. We're capturing our cut up prunings, chop and drop. And since everything moves with gravity, by creating these low spots for water, it also holds the fertility and the organic matter. And in the lower left, you can see in just a few years how that soil transformed. Okay, now I don't need a pick to get in the soil. Now I can just reach my hand in because of that freely accumulated organic matter in the low spots. And there's another great benefit to that because with more organic matter and more moisture in these low spots, we get more beneficial fungal growth like mycorrhizal fungi. And its white roots or hyphae fuse with that of the roots of the photosynthesizing plants, expanding the surface area of the root system of the plants, thereby enabling the plants to access more moisture in low moisture times. And there's this wonderful collaborative relationship where the mycelium gives minerals and nutrients and water to the trees and shrubs, the photosynthesizing plants, while the plants give sugars from their photosynthesis to the fungus. Collaborate. Okay, great system. And we can be part of that collaboration but with the water harvesting efforts. And taking this co-evolving mutualism as we are a beneficially contributing species amongst all the other species in our local ecology, let's use native plants as opposed to exotic plants. So these are two images of a mesquite tree, which is a common tree planted in the Southwest. So on the left is a South American mesquite planted in North America in Tucson. It can only support less than a dozen um, pollinators, native species of pollinators, because the native species have not adapted to it. Whereas on the right is a native mesquite, and it can support well over 60 species of native pollinators. So it's vastly superior for our native bird, butterfly, moth species, our native bee species. So if you want to just be a collaborative force, don't plant an exotic, which is a relative dead zone plant. Instead, plant a native because you'll be benefiting so much more. And as I'm sure all of you are aware, Douglas Tallamay's book, Nature's Best Hope, is a great resource on this. Okay, we also find the mesquite pods of the native mesquite taste a lot better than those of the South American ones. Okay, so let's take this whole idea of working with water to another level. Let's balance our water checkbook. So, how can we live in balance with our site's rainwater income? I give you real easy ways of figuring this out in my books and stuff. You can also go to your local cooperative extension. They can give you water budget information. But here in this case, this would be an example in Tucson. Let's say you've got 9,000 gallons of rainfall coming off your roof in a year. This would be a small roof. So if you were to plant 3 low water use native food bearing trees like the native velvet mesquite, each needing 3,000 gallons of water a year, if you planted those trees within or beside water harvesting earthworks that are getting the runoff from that roof, you've got your balanced water budget. Okay. You're not exceeding the budget. You're going to live within your on site rainwater income. But let's say you want to plant a more water hungry exotic fruit tree like a citrus tree, which needs 8,000 gallons of water a year rather than 3. So we only get 1 tree, not 3, because we're trying to live within this budget. The other thing is, an exotic fruit tree is not adapted to our dry seasons like a native plant is. So we have to give it supplemental irrigation in the dry times. And you can do that with just directing your gray water from your bathtub, washing machine, sink to that citrus tree. So you're not using any virgin potable drinking water. Okay. And if you want a vegetable garden, well, in this case, you're going to need to put in a rainwater tank so that you can collect that rainwater and slowly dole it out in the long dry times. Okay, this is what works best. You can send gray water to a vegetable garden as well, but if you do, you want to cook your greens before you consume them, just in case. Well, I don't know. Sometimes we crap our pants. It happens to me. It happens to a lot of people. I don't mean to do it. It just sometimes happens. Okay. So if I were to wash my pants in the washing machine, via a gray water system, and it went into the tree basin, that's okay because the fruit's up here. It's not getting in contact with it. But if it's a vegetable garden, I don't want it to accidentally touch any leafy greens, like on a salad greens that I'm going to eat raw. So for the vegetable garden, I either cook the greens if I'm harvesting my gray water, or I put in a rainwater tank and I'm not directing gray water to it, and everything works great. Okay, so what's the potential of gray water harvesting? Well, this is a graph from Tucson Water that shows you how water is typically consumed at a typical single family household. And notice the green section of the pie, 45%. So almost half the water is consumed outdoors, typically for irrigation. Now look on the left-hand side at the blue sections of pie, and you see how much water is consumed in the laundry, the sink faucets, and the shower. And if you combine those 3 blue sections of pie, you see that if you were to redirect the drain water from the washing machine, sinks, and shower to the landscape instead of the sewer, it would provide you with most of your outdoor needs. So there's great potential harvesting your gray water. Now, how can you do it? Well, the lower right image here shows you how you can set up some plumbing to direct the water from your shower or bathtub out to your landscape, okay? Maintaining a minimum 2% slope of your pipe. That way you don't need any pumps to move the water, okay? Gravity can do it all for you. But sometimes you all are going to have a concrete floor. You can't access the plumbing in the floor. So for that, we can set up an outdoor shower. Now, don't worry about it in winter when you maybe don't want to shower outdoors. Just think of it as a strategy you do in summer, where the plants really need your shower water, and it's a delight to shower outside. If you're worried about your neighbors, we'll wear a bathing suit. That's why they're called a bathing suit, or create a privacy screen. Okay. Um, but perhaps an easier way to start is with the washing machine. So here we've got a washing machine. There's the little standard sewer drain beside it. I will just put 1 or 3 additional pipes next to the washing machine, which direct the water instead to the landscape. This works really well, and it's cheap and easy if you have the washing machine against an exterior wall in the house. You can do it if the washing machine's in the house or if it's outside the house. Works both. So every time I do a load of wash, I take the drain hose behind the washing machine and I stick it in a different pipe, each pipe labeled with the tree it sends the water to. Okay, and here you can see how we send each pipe to a different part of the landscape. And here on the right-hand side shows you how the pipe is outletting above the mulch. So you want the pipe to outlet above the mulch and the soil so no roots can grow into and clog the pipe. Okay, works really well this way. Um, all right. And the other advantage of distributing your gray water to multiple points instead of sending it to one point is the soil never gets anaerobic or saturated and lacking oxygen, so it doesn't stink. If you get too much water in a place and it can never air out, then it can start to get stinky, but not with this system. Okay. Um, all right. I'm just going to tell you real quick, in Tucson, Arizona, you're required in new home construction to create a three-way valve that directs water from your gray water sources either to the landscape or the sewer. So you don't have to jackhammer through your floors or break through your walls to do it. It's already there at time of construction. There's still a few things we're working out with the city to make this even better, but it's a great start. And the other thing is we have a $1,000 rebate for anyone harvesting gray water. Okay, you can go even further. We can harvest the air conditioning condensate. This is a commercial scale, but you can do this at the residential scale. So this is at the University of Arizona College of Architecture Planning and Landscape Architecture. There's 3 air conditioning units on the roof. They direct all the water from those air conditioning units and the rainwater to the landscape. They also direct the gray water from the drinking fountains to the landscape. And as a result, they are meeting the vast majority of the water needs of this landscape with rainwater, 85,000 gallons of rainwater a year, and condensate, 95,000 gallons of condensate a year. There's actually more water in the form of the condensate drains from the air conditioners than rainwater. All totally safe to use in the landscape. Another water source you can use is the street runoff. So it's no problem for your plants. So here we cut the street curb to direct street runoff in. We put the curb cut on the high side of the stormwater basin, so we get greater capacity. And it's an eddy or a backwater system. Once it fills up, water backs up on itself, and the surplus goes to the next one, fills that up. Once it's filled, the surplus backs up on itself, and the surplus goes to the next. And here on the lower left is an image of one of those installations. Works fantastic. Okay, so we can freely irrigate street trees with the runoff from the street. And there's enough water for every street to be totally shaded by the streets, irrigated by the street. So this is an upper left is the before, lower right is the after when we did that on our neighborhood block. So all that abundant, native, multi-use, food-bearing vegetation irrigated for free from just the rain and the street runoff while controlling flooding at the same time and creating a much more beautiful, enticing, and edible neighborhood. This is just mimicking traditional Ak-Chin or indigenous Native American strategies, such as Ak-Chin runoff farming, where they would put their plantings, such as corn in this case, in the floodplain of a natural desert arroyo or ephemeral waterway. Um, so we're doing the same thing, but in our case, in the urban environment, the street is the arroyo, is the ephemeral waterway. And we are cutting the curb to break through that concrete wall that is separating the plantable floodplain from the paved waterway. When we started this, it was illegal. I think a better term is pre-legal. So the law just hadn't been changed yet. And so by creating an example, a successful pilot project, we showed that the law should be changed and now has been changed. So here we are cutting the curb with a 14-inch gas-powered diamond carbide bladed circular saw. Do all the cuts, and then when all is done, the last step is just knocking out the curb, and we're good. But we now actually do curb cores instead of curb cuts, 4 to 6 inches. The bigger diameter, the better. Just have to have a 2-inch minimum section of solid concrete above it, so everything's structurally sound. So it's a lot quicker, easier, and cheaper to do this work. Um, Still harvest the water off the street. And we're so successful along the street, we now work in the street. This is before we put in a water harvesting traffic circle in the upper left. And the upper right is just after we put in that traffic circle. You can see all the rainwater caught. Lower left, you can see the neighbors planting that water harvesting traffic calming roundabout with native food-bearing vegetation. And in the lower right, years after planting, neighbors actually harvesting the abundant produce grown within that water harvesting traffic circle. And we also do curb extensions here. Upper left showing the white line is where we're going to take out the asphalt. Upper right took out the asphalt and are excavating a basin. Lower left, we've got the basin. Lower right, you can see where we collected all the water and it's freely irrigating the associated vegetation. This has changed policy in the state in Tucson, Arizona. Now it's legal to harvest rainwater off the street, whereas previously it was illegal. You can get a $2,000 rebate for doing it, and it's mandated in all new road construction and road renovation, thanks to this guerrilla community action that proved the validity of this concept. Here's the Girl Scouts planting the food-bearing native mesquite tree, and then 10 years later, on the right-hand side image is my sister-in-law harvesting the edible seed pods from that tree. And you can see the blue arrow shows how we're collecting water off the street to freely irrigate it. And we've also got other edible foods we've harvested from these street side plantings, irrigated with nothing more than street runoff and rainfall. All right. And so that's a lot I'm throwing at you. For more information, I can't recommend these books enough in English and Spanish, which you can get a deep discount direct from me at my website, harvestingrainwater.com. And for more on our rain-irrigated neighborhood food forestry, check out neighborhoodforesters.org. And also be sure to check out my YouTube channel. Just search Brad Lancaster on YouTube, and it'll pop up because I've got lots of videos on all this stuff and more. All right. So thanks so much. And now I'll stop sharing my screen, and we'll do some Q&A.
Brad, that was absolutely fantastic. I had really no idea what to expect, and that was so interesting. And all of the principles apply no matter whether you're dealing with too much water or too little. I've got a bunch of questions, perhaps too many for the time allowed. So I'm going to hit you with them if you can be succinct with your answers. And we're going to see how it goes because I have so many questions for you. So first of all, a point, just like what you ended on, that piece about citizen action and advocacy and how much individuals and community can get changed in their area when things like municipalities or larger infrastructure is maybe moving too slowly or responding too slowly. Really cool, incredible demonstration of it. And thank you for doing that and just encouraging everybody else to get out there and see what you can do in your community to help us manage all of the issues we're having around water. Okay, so that point aside, getting started. So you've said that someone can start for the price of a shovel. Now people hear stormwater management or drought proofing, and even, looking at these images, they're expensive tank systems or a whole excavation crew. Like now all I want is my own little Kubota. But where can they actually begin? So like what's a small first step that they can do, and how can they think about that over time so that they could get to a landscape that has a changed topography to support, either rainwater harvesting or stormwater capture?
Okay. So where I might begin is just look for, well, where do I need some shade? Where do I need some habitat? So perhaps on the west side of my house, I've got too much afternoon sun baking me away. So there I'll look for, okay, here's a spot where I could plant a tree or a shrub. And I look to where can I bring in a little water? And if it's only rainfall, that's fine. We can start with that. So I'm going to create a basin-like shape so that when it does rain, I retain all that rainfall. None drains away or very little drains away. But even better, an even better spot to start would be where I don't just have direct rainfall, but there's also a little bit of water I could pull from maybe a roof drain, a roof gutter downspout, or maybe an adjoining sidewalk or whatnot. And then I start there because I'm going to have an even better success because I've got both rainfall and a runoff water source, turning runoff to run on, and that's right on. Okay. Um, and then I'm good to go. Now, let's say you've got your landscape already planted out. So then I'm just going to look for, well, where are there some bare earth areas between the plants that I could maybe create some of that water harvesting topography? Again, ideally, where it's not just collecting rainfall, but maybe also some runoff turned run on from a sidewalk or a patio or something like that.
Great.
And oh, and here's the thing too, price of a shovel. Maybe you don't have much energy. Okay. So just start to turn a high spot to a low spot and you've succeeded. All
Yeah.
right. You may
Pros.
find it fills up faster than you wanted. Well, you can always deepen it or widen it later. Just start.
And I think that goes to the next question, which is about trees. So one, I really appreciate your emphasis on trees. They are like our number one host plant for wildlife and provide bird habitat and all of that. And they also capture carbon and absorb water. And in our warming climate, they provide that shade and cooling. So when you talk about trees and shrubs, it shouldn't be blowing my mind, but it is. This idea of creating more of a basin, no matter if I'm in a stormwater area or a drought area. So we want to dig down. I mean, can you say like approximately how far down you're digging? And then when you plant it, you still want to make sure the crown of the roots is above the edge of the soil, right? Can you
Correct.
talk a
Yeah.
little bit more about how you do that?
Yep. So I typically find the minimum depth of basin I want is typically 6 inches. Okay. And if you want to get even more water, you could go 12 inches deep. Now, as to whether or not your plant is going to be in that basin at the bottom or the terrace or outside of it, but where its roots can still grow in and access it, that's going to depend on the water needs and tolerance of that plant. Um, so, but again, we're not doing any crazy depth or anything. You're not going more than 12 inches deep on anything. And again, 6 inches is probably going to suffice for many of you, especially in wetter climates. Um, uh, did I answer that entirely, or
That
did
was
I not
perfect.
not
Now I
quite
have
get
one
it?
more question though. So you mentioned mulching. Now I look around where I am and there's just mulched volcanoes everywhere and it kills me and a lot of them are synthetic
Mhm.
mulch. So one, what are you using for mulch? And two, how much mulch might you be putting on and why?
Okay, so I'm a freegan. Okay, I love free stuff. So I typically don't buy any mulch. So I'm instead just um, uh, pruning neighborhood street trees, cutting up the prunings, and that's my free source along with the fallen leaf drop. If I did want to bring in mulch from elsewhere, I could bring in some compost or some 3-inch minus size wood chips. I don't like the dyed wood chips. Um, that can work. In terms of depth, well, I go less mulch where there's less water, more mulch where there's more water, especially in our dryland environment. If I went like with a 4-inch layer of mulch over bare earth that's only receiving direct rainfall, I could initially dehydrate the associated plantings because that 4 inches of mulch would absorb the rainfall and it wouldn't make it to the soil below. Whereas if I had a water harvesting street side basin that's collecting rainfall and a substantial amount of runoff from the street, I could go 4 inches of mulch. So I basically don't want the mulch to be any thicker than can be thoroughly saturated in an average rainfall event. Okay? Does that make sense?
That's great. And I
Okay.
love, we're told to leave the leaves, as you said. It's called a leaf. And so this idea that leaves are mulch, and I think that's a shift in people's perspective. It's really important when you're trying to do more nature-friendly gardening. Your leaves can be your mulch. So you use them in garden beds, you use them in these new basins. Like that's what you do with all those extra leaves. So next question. We're going to talk quickly about soggy yards. So most people's instinct with a soggy yard or a big storm is to get the water off the property fast. And you tell them to do the opposite. So why does rushing it away backfire? And yeah, what can they do instead? Like I
Yeah.
have my French drains, sending it into my street, and I've made a tiny little rain garden near one, and it's flourishing. But you just talk briefly about why this is so important.
Okay. So you do want to drain water away from your house so your house isn't flooded, okay? But once that water is 10 feet from your house, you're good. Okay. Now you're within the landscape. So that's where you want to start planting the rain now. And but you're not just planting the rain. It's essential that you are planting the vegetation that's going to utilize this rain. And I'm not talking about turf, okay, with shallow roots. I'm talking about deeper rooted plantings. So for those of you in that have native prairie or can bring back native prairie. That can be many grasses, forbs, whatnot. And if you're in an area that's got more trees, trees are fantastic for this as well. So you want to create that living pump that you're collecting this water in your landscape that's going to utilize that water. So it is going to evapotranspire some, and this way it doesn't become a problem for your built infrastructure. Yeah, that's the key, the main
Great.
thing. So people miss that living component.
Great. And now a lot of people, when they think rain garden or anything where we're holding water on the land, think mosquitoes, especially where I am in the Northeast. Is that a problem?
No, so with all the strategies I'm advocating, you're going to have fewer mosquitoes because the whole goal is to infiltrate the water um, as quickly as possible. That's why you have all the sponge-like organic matter. That's why you have the living pumps of vegetation. And the goal is not to store water on top of the soil, but rather below the surface of the soil where we lose less of it to evaporation. So that sponge is to infiltrate it beneath the surface where mosquitoes can't access it and where we lose less to evaporation and the plants can utilize more of it.
Great. So, next question. You talked about gray water harvesting. Now, are there any concerns about soaps and detergents?
Mhm. Okay, so if you are on the east side of the Mississippi, you don't have to worry about this so much because you've got so much more rain than we do on the west side of the Mississippi. Um, So, in abundant rainfall areas, your rainfall is going to dilute whatever soaps, detergents you use for the most part. But the main thing is, don't use chlorinated bleach, okay? Because that's a toxin for soil life and for plant life. If you want to use bleach, instead use hydrogen peroxide bleach. That's okay for plants and soil life. And then when you are looking at, well, what kind of detergent or soaps I want, use liquid-based soaps and detergents, not bar soaps or powder detergents. With powder detergents, the bulk of the material in the detergent in that box is just salt-based fillers, making you think that you're getting more for your money, where instead you're getting less for your money and you're getting bad things. So the liquid-based soaps have less salt. And then if folks want even still more information, check out the Graywater harvesting page in my website, where I've got a resource page just dedicated to soaps, detergents, and what's best and whatnot. And this is also the soap question is why I like to direct both rainwater and gray water to same rain garden. So even in the dry areas of the West, I am still getting more of that rainwater and its dilution services where I'm also harvesting my gray water.
That makes sense. So you mentioned, east of the Mississippi not having this problem. I'm thinking about North Carolina right now. I've got a friend there, and they typically get twice as much rain as they have right now. I think they've gotten 8 inches so far this year. It's typically twice as much. And so, of course, North Carolina is also where Asheville got wiped out. How can these principles be applied to these areas that are rapidly fluctuating between too much to drought and too much rain? Like, are they all the same principles to apply? And yeah, what do you do?
Okay. Well, let me first just talk about how you would deal with that just in terms of gray water harvesting. So this is why I love using the three-way valve that enables me to either direct gray water to the landscape or to the sewer or septic. It's also why with that washing machine system I showed you with the multiple drain pipes, I can take the drain hose from the washing machine and either put it in a pipe going to the landscape or to the sewer or septic. So, if you have times of extreme rainfall and soil saturation, redirect that gray water to the sewer or the septic at that time. Um, this is, and then just talking about rainwater, this is again why we've got that essential principle of always having an overflow and managing it as a resource. So there will be a rain event guaranteed wherever you are in the world that is going to exceed the capacity of your system. So just ensure that you have a route for that water to go and size it appropriately. So, for example, you have a rainwater tank collecting water from your roof gutter and downspout. Your overflow pipe of your rainwater tank has to be at least the same diameter as the inflow pipe coming in. Okay? Seems real simple, but I see rainwater tanks all the time with an overflow pipe much smaller than the inflow, and the whole thing backs up. So, and then if you're talking about your diversion swales, your rain garden basin overflows, make sure that their overflow size is the same as the inflow size, and you're good.
Perfect. Thank you. One last question, I guess, which is about materials for the overflow tanks or the harvesting tanks. What do you typically go for in the world that is now very concerned about microplastics? I don't know if there's anything to
Uh,
do about that, but
okay, so you're gonna have to see what's available in your area. So, I sometimes you can get stainless steel tanks, but those aren't commonly available. Um, in much of the U.S. Elsewhere in the world, they definitely are. Uh, you can do. I've worked with a local septic tank manufacturer to create concrete rainwater tanks I can have above ground. He does some extra stabilization of them for me. The key is I have him use concrete that's rated for potable water collection. So let me answer that question, maybe a more general term, is I think really the main thing if you're doing plastic or not plastic is you want to select rainwater tanks that are rated for potable or drinking water storage. Okay. This way, you're not going to contaminate the water harvested in your tank with the tank. So there's a number of plastic tanks you can get that are made for agricultural purposes, but not drinking water. And in those senses, the chemicals used in that plastic can contaminate your water. Whereas if you get a plastic tank made for potable or drinking water storage, you'll be okay. Same thing that would go for your roof gutters, your roof system. Don't use any vinyl gutters. Those things are crap. Um, use the metal gutters instead. And the other piece is just in general, don't start with a tank. Start with the water harvesting earthworks and the Graywater harvesting. So you minimize your need for a tank, or at least you minimize how big the tank needs to be. So you can get away with a smaller, less expensive tank.
perfect. Well, thank you. Is there any other questions that are commonly asked that people might want to know the answer to? Or do we cover basics?
Just one other comes to mind is that sometimes when people see the street runoff harvesting that we do, they freak out and get concerned of, well, aren't there contaminants coming off the street? For those in cold climates where they are maybe salting the street, so you can plug your curb cut or curb core inlet during the winter times, so you're not getting that salty runoff coming in. And then after the things warm up, you unplug it and you're ready to go again. And then in terms of the asphalt and stuff, hey, don't worry, you're on a neighborhood street. You're not on in car mechanic central where everyone's changing their oil in the streets. So it's relative, okay? And I found that there's no issues with the runoff coming from a standard street in the warm times of the year that harms the plants in any way. The plants do great. It's just in terms of us. So I don't plant any leafy greens I'm going to eat raw along the street. I plant those in my rain garden in the yard where they're getting cleaner roof runoff. And then all the plantings that are getting street runoff, I'm just planting woody perennial species where I'm harvesting the water, the foods, the produce above the water level. And there's a general rule of thumb that perennial woody plants, they uptake and sequester toxins in their non-reproductive parts, like their wood, their bark. And we are tend to harvest the reproductive parts, the flowers, the fruit. And so we don't have the toxins in those like we would the wood.
Very reassuring and great to know. Brad, thank you so much. This was eye-opening for me and I'm sure for so many people. So to reiterate again, harvestingrainwater.com is Brad's resource. He's got incredible books. Check them out. For finding what plants to plant, as Brad said, take a hike. You can check out his website. I'll make one more plug. The Wilder Places app does have native plants for your area, and you can search by their water needs. And Brad, I think we should talk about collaborating to understand where they would fit in a terrace system. So maybe that's a feature to come. And I'm going to quickly just to share my screen one more time so that you can see if you are not yet part of the challenge and you just arrived here somehow, please join the Less Lawn More Life Challenge. We've got some more incredible webinars and challenges to come. And if you are an organization or you know of an organization or you want your town or HOA to get involved, you can scan the Share the Challenge QR code on the right, and that is going to get you the partner toolkit because the more folks involved in this and spreading the word, the better, because we as individuals can do so much to help manage our water, our resources, and support wildlife. And the last thing I'll say is, Brad, one thing I got to take away from your work is how much more beautiful your piece of land was after you did all that work and the plantings. It was just stunning. And so there's also joy for humans as we steward land and we plant and we scape these places into places that bring us joy in addition to creating habitat for so many other beings. So thank you, Brad, so much and really appreciate your time and knowledge.
No, thank you all. And thank to all you watching. Make good stuff happen.